Well, thanks for inviting me. I was actually had the fortune of meeting Dr. Church this summer because I enrolled my 12-year-old son in the Minecraft computer camp they hosted here at Austin P. And so I think he had more fun at that than maybe we're going to have today. I don't know. He was ecstatic, but I think he... So I want to share with you, I have three big things. First of all, before we get started, just who am I exactly? I appreciate the introduction. I got both a bachelor's and a master's degree at Auburn University, and my in-laws are all Bama fans, so that's a fun thing right there. I've actually worked as a pro developer since 1997, so I'm also kind of ancient, and I joined the Spring team back in 2010, who's actually the company that owns all that's called VMware, the people that make virtual machines and whatnot. And I'm presently the project lead for Spring Data JPA, the most by far popular Spring Data module that we have in our portfolio set, because despite over a decade of NoSQL data stores, people still reach for relational databases four out of 5 times. And I'm also the project lead for Spring Web Services. That is SOAP stuff. If you want to go read a spec that was last updated in 2006, then it's great if you need to get to sleep or something. Since my clicker wants to not work with me, I'm just going to be bored. So first of all, why should you even be listening to me at this talk? I've worked for over 2 decades as a professional software engineer, and I have released software that is used by literally millions of people, including many of the companies listed on the S&P 500. We sell to banks, to insurance companies. There's a lot of e-commerce sites. I think one time we consulted and helped Papa John's work on their website through our consulting area. And I personally collaborated with developers at Google, Netflix, Microsoft, Oracle, and many others. Basically, if you didn't know it, the Spring Framework, the Spring Portfolio is a Java-based thing. So the team I'm on, I heavily write Java code, and a lot of these shops use Java, and they use our stuff. So we actually have great opportunities to work with them on collaborations and stuff. And I've also written several best-selling software books. I just thought I'd throw them up here. But I did write a book on Python way back in the day. I like Spring Boot. These last two down here on the bottom left corner, I wrote them myself independently, and then a South Korean publisher came to me and offered me purchased rights to rewrite it in Korean. So I don't know what's in the book, but I'm trusting it's somewhat accurate. And then this is the latest one that came out about 11 months ago, Spring Boot 3.0. So I'd love it if you followed me on LinkedIn. I mean, that's really cool. You can go to linkedin.com and look for Greg L. Turnquist, because there's actually another Greg Turnquist somewhere up in the Northeast that actually writes software. So I've had to put Greg L. Turnquist on everything I publish. But I'd really rather you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Spring Boot Learning. So that's what I'm recording it, and I'm going to produce this eventually and put it there. And so, yes, that is me, dressed as Luigi, as we give a presentation using the templating engine of Mustache. Okay. So the first thing I want to go into is just what does it mean to be a software engineer? I mean, I'm sure all of you, if you've been getting your fingers into writing code and you're like, but what am I doing here? Well, first of all, pay's good, right? I mean, there's a lot of industries where you can make some decent money, but you can actually feel like accomplishing something. I went and looked up the stats, and as of November this year, just a few days ago, Glassdoor.com reports that entry-level software engineers can expect to make a $97,000 a year median income. Now that's a median spread over between $79K and $121K, just to give you a reference point. Something else to point out is in the software industry, at least, a lot of compensation packages are built on you have what's called a base salary, how much money they're paying you, once a month or twice a month, however they write that out. But they also often, some shops will pay bonus amounts, and it can be something like your bonus is 10% of your pay, or 15 or 20%, and it can be performative based. So they may say, this year was profitable, you met all your goals of what we expected out of you, so you get your complete bonus. Other years it can be, you didn't meet all your objectives, you get half your bonus. Or it can be, you did great, you met all your goals, this was not a profitable year, you get half your bonus. They also hand out stock options. Sometimes you hear there's a lot of terminology in that range, like things like called RSUs and whatnot, but essentially they can hand you a chunk of stock, and the stock is on a schedule, so that they may say the first 25% of your stock options do not become available to you until you're in for the first year, and then after that, maybe you get a piece of it every month after that. And if you leave the company, whatever stock options you had at that time are forfeited. This is why they call them the golden handcuffs. So it's a motivation for you to stay on board. And I've only heard of most companies, when you leave at that point in time, they may give you 30 days to exercise any options that you have. I only know of one company in the entire industry that changed those terms and made them 10 years. Nobody had done that before, and nobody has done that since. So it's just another option. But one thing, when I negotiated back in 2010 to join the spring team, and they threw a lot of options at me, I said the options don't pay for my mortgage. So I was able to talk them up on the base salary part. Because also, options are a finite chunk, and after 4 years, that could be the end of it. They can hand out more options, they may not. So it's something to consider. Now, I don't know if any of you are having to, I don't know how many here maybe on scholarship, maybe you're having to work some kind of hourly job to work your way through Austin P. I have no idea what it costs to go to Austin P personally, but as a quick metric, take the 97, drop the 3 zeros, and cut the number in half. That's about equivalent to making $48 an hour. So go compare that with some other job and look around, and it's a pretty good deal. One of the nice fringe benefits of this is you can work anywhere. You're looking at my office here. Dr. Church invited me and I said, can I record it? He said, sure. So I said, okay, I got to bring a little extra, but this is fundamentally my office. Work in coffee shops, that's not bad. Every coffee shop I've been to now has got Wi-Fi. You can go to the park, it's nice to get out, get some sunshine. You can go to the Caribbean, work out on the beach sipping pina coladas. You might have to use your hotspot to get on the internet. But watch out, there are some consequences with this kind of freedom. Let me give you an example. This summer I went and took my family to, not Disney World, but Disneyland in California. We got to see some of our favorite characters. That was really cool. And we went to go see these two guys over at the Super Nintendo World at Universal Studios Hollywood. And as we got off the ride, I had a text message from my manager that Spring Web Services was critical. We needed to get a release out, and I had overlooked that. I had forgotten that I needed to get that release done before I went on vacation. So while you may cheerfully write code in the middle of Disney World, I did that one time more like because I wanted to be able to say I'd done that. So I could come here and say I'd done that. Sometimes you end up making a release at 10 p.m. in your hotel room after spending the day at Universal Hollywood with the kids. And so all's good. My manager doesn't breathe down my neck. I accidentally was working last Friday when he alerted me that it's actually a company holiday for Veterans Day observed. I was like, oh, okay. Well, so he was shooing me to not work that day. So anyway, so something else in this industry is you have to keep up. I don't know any other industry that evolves faster than this tech industry. You need to be reading books, blog posts, tech articles on Medium. You need to watch videos on YouTube. And you need to keep learning new toolkits. What you're learning here is just the beginning. I one time had studied martial arts for years. I had to kind of give that up because I had arthritis in my knees, but I had attained a black belt, and I thought that was the top. And my master had instructed me, imagine going on a big road trip, and the first step you do is you need to load everything up into the car, you need to check the oil, you need to fill the gas tank. When you attain the rank of black belt, you're just getting in the car. You now have all the basic tools to get underway on the real trip. And in a sense, that's what you're doing here. You're getting all the fundamentals down to start this wonderful trip. And so what you're learning here is just the beginning. Now, a question, I see this all the time. I actually have fun going to Reddit. I enjoy picking threads that I can read on. Yes, it's a crazy social media platform, but all the time people are asking, is this language any good? Is that language any good? What about, is it okay to do Java in 2023? Well, first of all, yes, it's fine to do Java in 2023. What about C or C++, Rust, Python, JavaScript, TypeScript? What about Go? Come on. These are all good choices. There's people out there that are ready to pay you to write code in this stuff. I know somebody that built a consultancy and all they do is CSS. I don't know if everybody knows what CSS is, cascading style sheets on the web. This guy's really good at what he does. And for the life of me, I'm like, he must really love it. I don't know, no HTML, no JavaScript, just CSS. And I always love to dig this up when I cannot comprehend that. So there's plenty of paid positions out there for any of these technologies. But whatever you start off with today, it's not guaranteed to be in high demand 10 years from now. You need to be ready to pivot. You need to be studying things that sometimes you need to become an expert in what you're doing, but it also helps to widen your skill set a little bit there. Don't panic though, okay? Once you picked up a few programming languages, it's actually not that hard to shift. I studied Java in college in the 90s, and I didn't go back to it till around 2008. Somebody had left our team. Actually, they left the company, and they had a little Java thick client app that they built for the back office, and I went and took it over. I'd been working on this big system, a 24/7 by 365 operations support app that I'd worked on a proprietary stack that doesn't exist anymore. And I found somebody to take that app over. I'd worked on that for 10 years. So I gave it to somebody else, and I went and worked on this little Java app and had fun. After moving back to Java, I scored a position in one of the most renowned Java shops around the world. Of course, I'm speaking about the Spring team. We do have surveys that show the people that do use Java, about half of them use our stuff. So one thing is I got onto a team where probably everybody I talk to on that team can outrank me on what I can do. These people are phenomenal, and that's challenging to be to move into what proverbially a smaller pond. But what I've slowly discovered is different people know different stuff. We have one of the people that leads the team. He's one of the actual founders, Jürgen Haller from Austria. He knows so much about Java, every little thing of how the Java language works, how the Java virtual machine works. He's an authority on that topic. But there's other people that know like how to class load. What do class loaders do? If you don't even know what a class loader is, it's a giant rabbit hole to go down. But there's other people that know that. Well, the thing I knew how to do was write scripts to go hack server systems through using VI text editor and stuff. So I'm the guy that not only do I write Spring Data JPA code, I manage all of our continuous integration jobs because I know how to go make these servers do my bidding. So hopefully you're like, hey, I want to do that. You're here, you're studying this, I'm assuming you want to do that. What I want to give you is not just hey, here's all the good stuff I did. I want to give you actionable stuff you can take to help you further accelerate your career, because not only is there this campus body right in this room, there's people in classrooms across the country and around the world that are also entering this field. And I want to give you actionable stuff that you can take away from this. So what I want you to know is that there's always opportunities out there. There's always chances to do stuff. Things need to be done. Sometimes your team at a certain point in time needs someone who can sit down and slog through a stack of tickets and solve problems. Be willing to do it. Some people will say, I'm not, that's beneath me. If you can do it, someone's going to remember that. For Spring Data JPA, at one point in time, we had 10 pages of tickets on GitHub. And I was sort of at my wit's end on how to solve a complex tech problem. And I said, I'm going to take a break from that, and I'm going to go work on the backlog. I'm going to go to page 10 of the tickets and just start sifting through tickets. I found tickets that were 10 years old, and I was like, we're not doing this. This request is not happening. It's 10 years old, close the ticket. And I put a comment, a disposition saying, we're not going to do, or something akin to that. And I just started going through. That day I closed 8 tickets. What's 8 tickets? It's not a lot, but it's something. And then the next day I went through, and today I'm happy to report that the page count is now at 6 pages, so I've closed out 4 pages of tickets, but at some point we have to do that. That's not what I do, that's not what I did today. That may be your task for, like, say, 4 weeks. It may be something you have to do for a bit, but that's not going to be the only thing you do throughout your career, this one particular task that you're going to pick up and run with. Sometimes your team needs somebody who's willing to pause new development. There's always new stuff coming in. Either your manager walks into your office and says, we need this feature yesterday, or for open source toolkits, the community is saying, we need this feature. There's never a shortage of, we need new stuff done. Sometimes you need to say, I'm not gonna respond to that. For the next 2 to 5 weeks, I need to try out a new idea. I've been doing that for the past 4 weeks. I actually went into Spring Data JPA and I said, I get lost in here. It goes off into different tangents depending on what we're doing, and it's really confusing. And I was like, I want to try a new idea and see if I can streamline this whole process. And I've spent 4.5 weeks doing that. And it wore me out, but I'm very glad that I've done that. Sometimes they need someone to throw together a proof of concept, a toy app to try something out. Don't worry, it's not going to go into production, except that it usually does. Yeah, they'll say it every time. So just by FYI, be prepared to support your little proof of concept until you can hammer out its flaws or perhaps rewrite it from scratch. using everything you learned in the process. Because the other thing is it's easy to go find blog articles where somebody says, I went and rewrote this thing that was written in Rails. I rewrote it with Django, which I don't even know if people use either of those today. But I rewrote it with Django, and it was better. Well, there's also learned knowledge there that guides your thing. If you went and rewrote a Rails app in Rails, it's probably going to be better because there's learned experiences. So something that's good to do is, like, you may have to support your little proof of concept and eventually figure out where it's going to land in the long run. Software engineering is about rising to the needs of your teammates, managers, and most importantly, your customers, clients, and users. And this famous quote was by me just now. So, and it's really about, what do people need? You know, I like to think, oh, I get on the computer. What's the computer want me to do? Well, the computer's not telling me what to do. It's people that are coming to me and putting in requests. They come to us to solve a problem. And that's also why not only do you need to know how to code, but you need to learn how to communicate with your teammates. It can become just as important. I'm not going to say it's ever more important, because first and foremost, our job is to write code, but we also need to be able to communicate. And there's rare opportunities where it's going to be just you doing it all by yourself, answering to no one. This is why it's valuable to keep reading books on your technology each and every year. I want to underscore that point, each and every year. Now think about it. What does Austin Peay cost for a semester for a 3 or 4 year program? Now imagine going out and spending $30 on a paperback tech book, like, I don't know, some React.js or something like that. Think about doing that 3 times a year and level up. Throw in taxes, and what are we talking about? $100 a year. Now compare that to the cost of tuition to get a major program. That's a major step up in your skill set for $100. And we just mentioned this is potentially an opening salary of $48 an hour. That's 2 hours of labor to afford that. Some books are going to be junkers, by the way, so you can read it. Okay, that one wasn't so good, but maybe the next one's like, Docker fundamentals or something like that. It's like, wow, I didn't know that. Speaking of books, one thing you do is, if you ever get a chance to speak in front of a crowd and you have a beholden crowd, don't forget to mention what your next book is that's coming out. So if you go visit 12rules.io, I can't fit all my tips into this session here, so I'm writing this one now and it's mostly done. So you can grab it on pre-order off my website, and essentially I'm trying to collect all these tips of everything. I'm afraid Dr. Church can't fit everything into this curriculum, or you'd be here for 10 years. So I'm trying to capture the other stuff that can also continue to help you expand your skill set. Which leads me to a critical thing that can help you out, and you don't have to wait to graduate to start this. Now, after today's session, sometime maybe tonight, before you go to bed, I want you to go create a Google Doc. Now, I'm going to say there's pretty fair odds that just about everybody in here has a Google account. If not, consider doing it. We use Google Docs as one of our collaborative tools between our teammates, because my nearest teammate is in Portland, Oregon. But begin logging your daily coding activities, the stuff you're working on, homework assignments, design projects, whatever it is. But why? There's actually a YouTube channel out there called But Why, and it's really cool. But why would you want to do this? Because in this business, we have several foes that must be defeated. I don't have sinister music to back me up here. The biggest one of those in this industry is called imposter syndrome. It's the feeling that you're working on something that you're faking it to make it, and that you're the imposter. You're not real, and that really is amplified if you're on, say, a team where everybody is talented and skilled. One way when you're working on a team with other people is you want to feel smarter than everyone else, and the consequence of that is you end up not listening to anybody. You don't listen to others, you're not accepting feedback or help. You're not able to say, I don't know how to do this. Could somebody pair with me and we could go hammer it out? Whereas an alternative way is you interact with a team of people that have something to teach you. I mean, I talk about these people that I work with every day. They're very talented. That can feel very challenging, because to work in that, you need to be vulnerable and willing to say, I can do this, I don't know how to do that. For example, just to put it out there, I don't know if you know what JPA is. It's the Java Persistence API. It's a standardized form to interact with relational databases through a object relational mapping structure, ORM. I'm very skilled at relational database queries. I can write left outer joins in my sleep, and I know what correlated subqueries are and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very skilled at relational databases, but my knowledge of JPA is somewhat limited. Two of the people on the Spring Data team worked as consultants for Hibernate, the #1 library that implements JPA. So I'm surrounded by people that are probably way better at JPA than I am, and I've had to ask them for help multiple times to be like, I don't know where to go with this. And they were able to look at it and say, that's a Hibernate bug. You need to tell the person to go close our ticket and go open a ticket against the Hibernate team. And that is my favorite answer I ever heard, which is not our problem. Okay. But that's something I had to learn how to be able to just say, I don't know how to handle this. You know, this is the feeling. What do I know? So here's the idea. If you begin logging your own daily accomplishments, then every day at a glance, you can see everything that you've done. And I'm going to show you here in a second my own log. That's because memory is very hard to lean on, because we're prone to remember other people's successes while remembering our own failures. Now, I've learned since getting married that my memory is like Swiss cheese, whereas my wife has this impeccable ability to remember where everything in the house is with specificity. And if you're trying to remember what you did a week ago, that's a dicey game. But if you start making a daily log of your own accomplishments, you get to see that every day when you're logging your stuff in. I come to work every morning and I write down what I'm doing. And I can see, oh, there's the stuff I could see I was doing yesterday, the day before. I can pause and just scroll back for 30 seconds and wow, that was 8 tickets I got that day. I did that, that's neat. Then you can Cobra Kai kick imposter syndrome to the curb, because it really fills you with this, hey, I got a lot of stuff done. Before I go on to this next part, I'll even show you what I got here. So this is my thing. I track PTO time at the top, so I know what I'm not going to go over, but I started this about a year ago, and now it's 80 pages. And the other thing that this does, I put in, here I have links to tickets. Here's a ticket marked as duplicate. Here's another ticket, continued discussion on this behavior, whatever. And it also builds me a running log, so when my manager comes to me and says, hey, you know that annual meeting that I as your manager attend to decide who gets what merit review, who gets what pay raises, or if we're going to hand out equity, can you tell me the 3 biggest things that you did over the last 12 months so I can defend you in the meeting? Let me get back to you. Can I have about an hour to get back to you? I can go sift through this and look for content and give him the information he needs. My manager doesn't go to this annual status meeting to tear me down. He needs evidence to back me up. And what better way than to have my own work efforts? Really good managers, maybe they can remember what you did, but don't rely on somebody else to manage your stuff. So that's all it takes, a Google Doc. I started doing this, and I just haven't stopped, and I would recommend it to anyone. Now, by the way, if you got any questions, shoot them out here. We'll have questions afterwards as well. Yeah?
Have you heard of Obsidian? It's kind of like a note-taking software.
So, have I heard of Obsidian, a note-taking software? I believe so, because is it this guy's name Sebastian?
I'm not sure who did it, but links similar things. I was talking to you about it earlier. I can pull up, but it.
So it's like Evernote on steroids or something.
Yeah, it kind of like.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is some guy's notes. He's in his master's, but everything is linked together, with little dots and little threads.
Well, that's a good system too. I reach for Google Docs because I use it every day, but something to track your stuff, that you're doing, that you can go glance at in a moment's notice. I'd recommend that. It's a great idea. So we've talked about, what is software engineering and what can you do to accelerate your career. We talked about things like, studying, keeping up, going and finding content out there, whether it's books or there's YouTube channels out there, podcasts, tech articles, Medium posts. But there's another dimension to this, and it's what can you do for others, which may sound a little strange, but since you're like, wait a minute, I'm just learning this, I'm just getting my feet wet in this, it's something I want you to keep in the back of your mind. What this world operates on is what I call value creation. Now, there's sort of a cynical attitude, well, the world runs on, bad money or something like that. And there's some element of truth to that, but when we create value for other people, people come back to us willingly. People are like, you solved that problem for me. Can you solve this next problem for me? And your career as a software engineer is based on others compensating you monetarily for bringing value to the customer. Or maybe you become a consultant and you're, directly working with clients, and the clients that you provide the most value to will come back to you. They will bring money to you if you solve problems for them. Once my, quote, customer was an in-house department of finance people that handled invoices. Now, this was at a previous job, and I talked about this Java app that I got to go take over and have a lot of fun with. Part of the fun was the fact that I was actually helping these people. They had to process monthly invoices from 300 telco carriers. AT&T, Bell South, SBC. I didn't know all the mom and pop shops that are out there, but there's tons of them. And they had monthly invoices coming in, and they had to process them. And they had to dispute charges. And that was a nightmare job. There was half a dozen people working this all the time for what came in once a month. It took months of effort, but I was able to reform what was a non-operational app, make it operational, empower these people to the point that I was actually meeting with these people every week. We'd get together in a conference room, kind of like this. I would hook my laptop up to it, and I would use PowerPoint. And I would make one scenario, they'd say, we need to do this. I'd make a slide. I'd write out what are the steps you need to do that. There's usually 3 to 5 steps to capture, a scenario. I'd flip it to another one, capture another slide. We'd sit there and capture half a dozen slides, and I turned each request into a test case, an implemented feature, and then I would try to roll it out in the next release. So we had a kind of a humming flow of get together, what do you need? Let me build it for you. It was my job to make sure it tested well. And at that point, I realized what we were doing, it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with me as a stellar coder or anything like that. And it had nothing to do with what the tech was built in. They didn't care that this was a Java app. They didn't know what Java was. It was about serving their needs and making things easier for them. And I would pass them in the hallway or stop in the break room to get a coffee. And they were like, well, I was able to knock out those 10 invoices today. That used to take me a whole week, but I got them all done today. That kind of stuff. And when you hear people doing that, then you're like, yeah, I did something that mattered. And that's what matters, the value you bring to others. So creating value extends to fellow coders, teammates, community members, and even to your competition. What? See, if my clicker was cooperative, I wouldn't have done that. There's a thing out there, maybe you've heard of it, maybe not, called co-opetition, and it's just a nice portmanteau of cooperation combined with competition. I mentioned before, I've collaborated with professional software engineers from some of these big shops up here, and we often sell competitive products, but it's not vicious or like what's that TV show, Mad Money or something with different products serve different customers. There's banks, there's big insurance companies, there's like Etsy, there's mom and pop shops, there's different people want different stuff to solve different problems. And so sometimes we team up with other companies to bundle stuff together. Sometimes we're working against each other. Sometimes we're both bidding to sell a cloud solution to the federal government, for example. But some of the people that are directly selling these competitive products are people that were once part of the team that I'm on today. I've got teammates that I worked with that they left our team. I think the guy told me he got an offer he couldn't refuse, so he went and joined Microsoft to be a cloud advocate over at Microsoft. Building relationships with fellow coders and keeping channels open is valuable. Now, what do I mean about that? Don't be afraid to appear on somebody's podcast. I don't know if you know who Oracle is exactly. They're the people that technically own Java. They own they're the patents and trademarks and whatnot on Java.
Aren't they the original creators of Solaris and the Spark processor?
So the question was, didn't they originally create Solaris and the Spark processor? And the people that made that was Sun Microsystems, who were thusly acquired by Oracle because Oracle knew how to make money and Sun Microsystems did not. But I've been to conferences where one of the developer advocates from Oracle, who's somebody who's selling a competitive flavor of Spring, he was hosting a podcast. If you went up and talked to him, he'd put you on his show. He was recording podcast stuff all the time. There's no harm in that. Get on somebody's podcast, it's a great chance to get on a podcast. This guy that I mentioned who went to Microsoft to be a cloud advocate, he went and wrote his own book. And they asked me if I'd review it. Sure, I'll review that. Or you could share somebody else's text. Somebody else could write a tech article. They post it on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever. You can share that. These are great ways to help other people and spread value. This is one of my earlier books. This was the book that when I signed the contract with PAC, the next day they put it up for pre-sale. And because it took me 12 months to write, instead of PAC's traditional 6-month turnaround time, it had 12 months of pre-sale. So when it finally got sold, I earned back all the advance in the very first billing cycle. And I had that guy at the time that I keep talking about was one of our developer advocates, and he would tell everybody that he ran into when he traveled to conferences as part of his job to go buy this book. So when he wrote a book, heck yeah, I was happy to do that. I was actually I did a review for it. They put it, I don't know, I think they stick my name on it technically on Amazon because my name's in there. But I was like, you wrote a book? I'm not, the year that came out, I didn't have a book. So it's like, that's no problem. Keep the channel open. And later after that, I said, you want to come on my live stream? And so sure enough, we did. Which ironically, I went to go grab a screenshot to put in the deck, and we're sitting there chatting, and it's the part where he's actually talking about co-opetition. So you can go to my channel and find out, need to scale your Spring Boot app? This may be exactly what you need to go find out who this guy is. Sharing what you've learned with others not only hones your own skill set, it's a great way to take the value others have placed in you and pass it along to others. There's a certain element of, well, I just heard something. Can I repeat it to somebody else and get it right? That builds the neurons in your brain to be able to remember stuff, whatever. But it's also it's the right thing to do, is to pass on value to others. And that was said by me. So, not everything that we do in this, either in this world or in this business is just for pure monetary gain. And people will remember genuine sincerity. So instead of saying, well, I'm gonna meet with this guy or guy or gal, whatever, I'm gonna meet with this person just so that they're gonna help me. People can sniff that out. You can sniff that out, they can too. When opportunities abound, others are more likely to remember if you first made an effort to help them. So just think, what can I do to help? Is there something I can do to help on this front? Now, if you like this talk, go smash the like button. Was it? Okay, you got to go tell Dr. Church that you want me to come back, and be sure you need to subscribe to Spring Boot Learning YouTube channel. By the way, don't forget 12rules.io. Okay, so the question is, what advice do I have to offer for somebody who's working maybe in the adjacent fields, like there's IT management, network engineering, things like that, and there's a lot of stuff that's applicable there. Like you can surely find a book like on how to configuring Cisco routers or what have you.
A lot of what I do, because I run a small technology company here in Clarksville, it's called Ron's Tech. We do a lot with Ubiquity and their solutions. We do a lot with Cisco. We do a lot of those things. This is one of those things where, is there anything that you talked about today that I could apply, or anyone else in this field could apply to what we do?
Well, other things are like I don't know how big of a community, like the product that you're building your business on top of is where is the community for that toolkit or those suite of products? Because it's like, can you find them out there? Are there YouTube channels, podcasts? Mm-hmm. One thing is, I know somebody that joined our team because he first built a habit out of going to stackoverflow.com, the Q&A website for software developers, and started answering a question a day on a particular tech stack. And so when he came and interviewed after 12 months of that, it was a shoo-in because they could look at all the content he had written, and that they're like, the toolkit. He qualified for that. So if you're able to go build a presence in that community for that toolkit, that's an element right there of, because that's also, if you're wrong on something, the other people will point it out. And so that you're gonna remember that, and it kind of steers you. And I like the idea. Go log, what are you doing? What are you working on? Log, use deep links to track stuff. Think about, a month from now, do I want to come back and be able to find this conversation that I was involved in? Or maybe they're on Reddit or something, I don't know. Those are things I would do, make your own log. Some stuff. Okay.
Did you help found the Jug in Nashville?
Oh, the question is, did I found the Java user group in Nashville? Yes.
What inspired you to do that?
It's kind of what I said here. I wanted the opportunity to go shout Spring from the rooftops. But and the other thing is you may not know this, but Nashville is a heavily .NET oriented city. So there's like gobs of healthcare businesses in there, and a lot of them use .NET. And I went to a .NET conference that used to be here, and I met one other person that wrote Java code, and the two of us teamed up to form the Nashville Java User Group. And we were like, if you come and give a talk and you're not just selling your product, then you can come in. We even let people come in and talk about JavaScript. As a past colleague of mine said, Java is to JavaScript as car is to carpet. But I actually turned that over to a friend of mine, Baruch, to take over that, because we shut that down during the pandemic. We couldn't meet there anymore, and I had moved to doing YouTube stuff. So I talked to Baruch I was actually out in Las Vegas for Spring 1, and I chatted with them and agreed to hand them the reins. So they're back in action. I think Josh Long's coming. Is it the end of this month? Yeah.
What would you suggest?
Okay, so the question is, he's in IT security. What kind of coding does he need? And here's where I'm going to have to say, I do not know what security people need these days. Something people come to me and ask in a different vein that's kind of adjacent to what you're asking is, where would you start at? And I say, well, in a lot of apps, the biggies are you need to be able to build the web page, you need to be able to access a database to persist all the data, and you need to lock it down, because if it ain't secured, it's not a real app. And I'd say everybody and their cousin's doing web apps. In fact, pick any noun, go out to the internet and type that word and add the word JavaScript, and you'll find somebody built a toolkit named that. One time I wrote an article and I just picked the word tomato out, and I went up and looked, tomato JavaScript, there's a module called tomato.js. So either you build the web, everybody else is doing that, it's very competitive to do that. Or how good are you at persisting data? Well, that's something I'm really good at. Do you know how to query data? It's not rocket science to write SQL queries. Or can you do security? Security is something you need to go get lots of certifications, qualification. There's like a whole nother world of content to study there that I'm not fluent in. We have somebody on our team that we have a module called Spring Security, which is one of the foremost Spring tools for security that's been open source from day one. And whenever I talk to our team leader about Spring Security, I'm like, I don't know what the guy's talking about, and I feel like I understand security. So there's books on all kinds of security tools out there. It's almost like go to the Barnes & Noble and start, just look. I think they have whole sections allocated for security. Now, what are you talking about? AWS, cloud, like there's different security tools for AWS, for Azure, for whatever cloud you're on. Docker security. You can just start searching any of these topics and just add the word security, and you can probably, I don't know what the median income for somebody starting in security is, but if you got all the training and certifications in place, you may be able to start at a higher salary than that. My brother-in-law had expressed to me, he had this deep-seated interest to actually go into IT security, and I was like, do you have any school training in that? He said no, and I went and talked to my manager, and essentially that was, they weren't interested. So if you've got the training, so I don't know if that answers your question, but I would go looking for books on various stuff, and again, I'd buy 3 books a year and learn everything you can and find out what they want. Yeah, in fact, actually, this is some of what I've found. I've made a lot of videos on my YouTube channel that are about Spring Boot technology, surprise, surprise. But I want to do something more universal because tech-specific stuff ages rapidly. So, and one of them was I was wanting to talk about, like, what do you do? What about your first day? And I actually wrote a Medium article. If you go look for Spring Boot Learning on Medium.com, you can find my site there. But, the first day that you're there at the job, you need to just learn, how do I get into my email? What's the instant messaging tool they're using? Are they using Slack? Are they using Discord? Learn how to get on there. But overall, like the first month that you're there, ask them, what do I need to be reading? Because at that point, they're not expecting you to write new code. They're not expecting you to knock it out of the park. They're expecting you to learn the vocabulary that they use. So start reading the code. What am I assigned to a specific app? What should I read? You can ask either your tech leader for that tool or your manager. What do I need to be reading? So you're ingesting it. Some of the stuff that they need is, not only do they need people to write the code, they need people to test the code. My first position I got was, I didn't write new code, I tested other people's code. They didn't trust me yet with new code. But I eventually tested somebody's system, that person left the contract, and I inherited that system because by testing it, I knew more about it than anybody else on the team. So, opportunity. So, you can go find out, how do they build their documentation for this tool? Because one thing you can do is you can start reading the documentation, looking for typos, or this sentence was awkwardly worded. Maybe I can reapply it. I speak native English, whereas the person that wrote it doesn't. So I can help polish it. And the side effect is by reading and ingesting the documentation, you can start to learn it. Can I build a demo app using this toolkit? That's what I did when I got put on what's called Spring Helios. Helios is hypermedia app, what was it? Now I've lost it. Hypermedia, REST, whatever, representational state transfer. Spring Data REST is built on top of Spring Helios. It's links. It's building links for stuff. And the fastest way for me to learn what the heck this toolkit did was I built a demo app to take it for a test spin. And then as I got better at that, I learned the way it's doing this one thing is a little kind of wonky, and I started making changes to it, making changes to documentation. So learning how to use the technology, how to read about the technology, you can then slowly but surely start to contribute to the technology. And so that's my suggestion. Was there a question over here? So the question is, what would I do right now if you're trying to maximize your value before you graduate? Well, here's a question I have maybe to bounce it off of is, do you all use GitHub? I don't know if you even know what github.com is or if you're using it fervently. It's not the only game in town, it's the biggest game in town. So you need to have a GitHub account, because even if your team that you join is not on there, one of the tools that they're using probably is, and they may say, there's a problem with this tool we use, we need to open a ticket. You need to get on GitHub. So it's really good learning how to write the code. Like, hey, I had a challenge. Well, here's an example of a scenario I ran into. So one of the classes I had to take in college was it was a Linux system administration class. So we had to learn there's this one machine in the lab that had Linux on it. Somebody had messed up the Etsy password file. Nobody could log into it. And the professor was very hands-off. He's like, y'all figure it out. Well, one night I had to go in and work on a different lab assignment, but I spotted the guy in the class who already knew Linux. The professor had told this guy very keenly, don't help the other students. They need to learn this on their own. He was on that machine doing stuff. And I was like, can you show me how you got onto that machine? So I didn't ask him to tell me. He showed me how he was able to, with server CDs, boot the thing up and get into the machine and sidestep the fact there was no password file. So I learned how to do that. That's called being resourceful. So look for these opportunities. What can I study? What can I learn? And, try to build demo apps. Is there, So I'm married, I have 3 kids. I have to be judicious with my time. When I was single and I didn't have any kids, there were times I really would work late hours. Sometimes I was like, I'm in the groove of this. I can work late. And I'd stay till midnight sometimes and go home. I wouldn't make that the main thing. I wouldn't make that a regular occurrence, but there's times when you can do that. And that's I remember talking to one of our managers at that company at the time. That company had a pipeline to like 5 different universities, so they were always hiring new grads. And he point blank told me that's something they take advantage of. New grads out of college cost less than seasoned, experienced developers out of California, and they tend to they tend to have the opportunity, they can spend more time. And so that's a fact of life. If you've got the surplus of resources in your hand like that, use that as your chance to build up some chops, to build up some skills. Maybe you can build the app in Java or whatever, but also learn how to manage it in Bash or whatever your command line stuff is. What's the whole thing? What can I do to make myself very good at this from all perspectives? Because the time we started having kids, I had to get my hands off the keyboard and stop. Now my brain kept working at it, so that's when you're like sitting there watching TV at night and you're like, aha, that's how I do that. It's this weird phenomena. But I would wait till I got there the next day, and then something that I'd spent 10 hours going down the path of, I realized was totally wrong. And so the next day I was able to fix it in 10 minutes. You have a question? Did you say how can you promote yourself for a IT management or an IT engineering position? So one of the things I recommend is there's different advice about how to put your name out there. And my suggestion would be is to go create a LinkedIn profile. Now, if you go Google my name and look up Greg's opinion on LinkedIn from about 10 years ago, you're going to find a very different opinion. I said LinkedIn wasn't worth it. I actually closed my account, but they actually have since changed, and now I recommend getting on it as the place to build your sheet, build your CV, and you can go on, you can look at mine and see the kind of stuff I put on there. And I talk about this in the book as well. But I would build that as your first point of, if a hiring manager is going to stop and look at what you did, that's where they're probably going to look first. And newsflash, when hiring managers are trying to make a decision on whether they're going to reach out to you, you have about 8 seconds before they're going to look at something, scan it, and say, I need to check further, or I'm moving on. There's people that at a certain point in time said GitHub is your CV. It's got everything you've ever done. First of all, that's inherently wrong, because before I got hired by the Springtime, everything we did was federal government based. It was closed source. It definitely was not on GitHub. Nobody could see my work. Yet somehow I got hired by this team because I had actually worked as one of the people doing hiring at my old company, and I knew what hiring people look for. So when they were interviewing me, I knew what they were looking for. So they want to see, like, okay, can you complete stuff? Can you can you be handed a problem and find a solution? What is your experience at solving problems? So when you build that profile on LinkedIn, think about that perspective. It also helps. I built this with C++. I worked on this project with Rust. I did this with Java. You can list the specific technologies. Sometimes they're looking for people they need to hire that on day one they need you to write JavaScript. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they need somebody that can solve problems, and they will train you on the tech that you're going to do it in. So they need an aspect of both. This person's actually touched several different languages, and this person has completed a lot of stuff. So I think those are two biggies, and you can really apply that whether you're talking about a computer software engineer, network administrator, whatever. It's kind of the same principle. And here's the fun thing: no job that I've gotten came from LinkedIn. But then again, I had my first job, which I got hired by Harris Corporation, which is now L3 Harris, back in '97, and I jumped to the Spring Team in 2010. I have colleagues that are more restless. I know somebody that in the UK, and about every 2 years he goes to a different shop. But I don't think people come to him. I think he goes to people. He's also built a huge network of people that he knows, that he's connected, that he's collaborated with, that he's interacted with. So he may run into people and say, that sounds neat. Could I join your team? There's a little bit of hearing an opportunity, but then taking the initiative to leap for it. That's another angle. Something else I would not do today is join a startup team, because startup teams are, you want to work 60 hours a week? You like that? You may make huge equity, you may not. But I have 3 kids. I need a little more insurance than that. So I wanted to work for the Spring Team sooner than that, but I waited till 2010 when they got acquired by VMware for $420 million. And so now we're owned by a company with 35,000 employees. I figured the odds are a little more stable. So I handed my resume, and I had to wait 12 months before they ever called me back on that. And I claim credit as the first person hired on the Spring Team after the acquisition. So I don't know, 2 people joined after me, but I was hired on commercial engineering, which was adjacent to the Spring Team, but these 2 people got hired directly to the Spring Team. So I say it's ambiguous who got to the Spring Team first. But anyway. There are other questions? Hey.
So from the time you got to the Spring Team in 2010, were you the team lead when you got there, or what was the
no.
through the team like?
So the question is, so when I got to the Spring Team, was I a team lead? What was, what was that? And I'm like, no, I was not. I was under somebody else's tutelage. I worked on a plug-in for a commercial toolkit. So they had a I don't know if anybody knows what Apache Tomcat is. It's a servlet container for the Java platform. But they had a commercial version called TC Server. They had a monitoring tool that I can't even remember what it's called, and they had a plug-in so these two could talk to each other. So, I mean, talk about the most abstract idea. That was absolutely not mockable or unit testable. And so I started there, and that was something when I had to get on the server and, just sit there and write scripts and stuff. But at one point I was jumping. I would get some assignment. It would be 2 weeks long. I would finish it. My manager would find me a 2-month assignment. I would work that. And I finally met with them face to face at the spring team has an annual spring conference. It was originally set up like back in 2006 or something. Basically, spring formed as a distributed team, and they said, let's all get together face to face. Let's have the conferees pay for it. So they're like, we'll get together, we'll give presentations over 3 days, and then we'll all be able to have time to spend together face to face. So I actually finally met my manager face to face in San Francisco, and I was like, this is not very effective because I have to start up. There's this cost of rolling up and getting active on a project. And he goes, I agree. Ollie said they need somebody on the Spring Data team. Oliver Dropbaum was somebody that sort of founded the Spring Data team, and he's in Germany, and he was there. So I sat there and chatted with him for about an hour, and I could understand about half of what he said. Not because he was German, but because this guy was technically brilliant. So, he was like, well, we need, nobody's paying attention to Spring Data REST. We don't have enough coverage. Would you be willing to take that over? And I said yes, like in a heartbeat, not aware of how difficult that would be. But I jumped onto the Spring Data team in like 2013, and that's been my primary job for the past 10 years. One of our teammates in Holland who built the Spring Web Services SOAP toolkit, he had to take a 3-month paternity leave, and they said, we need somebody to take over Spring Web Services. And I was like, and my manager came to me and said, are you willing to do it? And I was sort of voluntold yes. So, and I'm like, you want to talk about something I did not understand? Eesh. But, and it's constant development, but I liked it when they needed somebody to fix the continuous integration solution on Spring Data. And I'm like, my first assignment, and I tested other people's code, I kind of invented continuous integration before I'd even heard of it. So I had cron jobs back in '97 that would run at night against everything, and it would print out a report, and I would see it in the morning, and I was like, and that was before somebody had invented continuous integration. So I was like, I'll do that. I can do that. So sometimes you have opportunities, you just reach for them. So. So the question is, what about textbooks? Or is there a must-read textbook? And somebody else asked me this, and I actually have to say no, because all the textbooks I have that were game-changing are way too ancient. So you need to get what's current. And some of the best textbook, it depends on what technology you're going into. Like, so if you need to use Docker, you can go to the Docker community and say, hey, Docker people, what's the best Docker book to go grab? And they'll tell you. Or if you're going to do Java, what's the best Java? What do you mean Java? Do you mean vanilla Java, Spring Java? That's really a beast if you're talking about JavaScript. What do you mean Java? Vanilla JavaScript, jQuery? Does anybody even use jQuery anymore? I don't know. But React.js JavaScript, so, I had studied I don't know if you're familiar with the Dragon book, Compiler Construction. That is a killer book. I had that. I had to take compiler construction in college. Each week we built up a compiler. If you didn't keep up, you were dead. And I did not keep up. I was dead. I had to drop the class. I then had to retake it the following quarter. I kept up. And then I got to grad school and I had to teach that class, in the lab at least. And then I was like, there's no dropping it when you're the graduate teaching assistant. And so since then, 2 different times I've reached for the Lex and Yak tools to build compilers. And this year, I actually needed to we finally decided to build a parser for Hibernate inside Spring Data JPA so we could apply our own manipulations to it. And I heard about this thing called Antler. So I started reading up on Antler, and then I read about the guy who said Lex and Yak had too many holes, so he built Antler on usability, and he was not kidding. So I came and demoed that to my team, and they were like, let's do it. So the Dragon book is great, but that's very niche, and maybe Antler, Definitive Guide to Antler is more the thing to read today.
Yeah, I appreciated hearing all of, there's the tech books that focus on particular technologies, and then there are the books that I think of as the timeless books. The Dragon book is one of those timeless books. You could read that back when it was first published, you could read that back today. Other books that I think of as being the timeless books, the Gang of Four Software Design Patterns, I
Yep.
think of as a timeless book, and
Oh, Domain-Driven Design by Eric Evans. That was written in
Domain-Driven
2006,
Design.
and
There
that
you
is
go.
still the governing, that's the guideline behind the Spring Data Repository solution is based on that book, and that book still sells good today.
yeah. So there, and going all the way back to the 1970s, there's a book called Elements of Programming Style. The language for that book was PL1. But I still think that's a good book for software engineers today, even though it's older than me. Any further questions for our guest? Thank you so much. Let's give.